Atari STE does what Amiga can't. You're going to kill me. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Faster.
It's not the years, honey. It's the mileage.
And do you like to watch or take part?
All this and a whole lot more coming up on today's show. Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Good morning, Neil. How are you?
Good morning, Dave. I'm good. I've had a roller coaster this weekend. I've been working on the Arcadia project, which is that Amiga-based arcade machine. Really had a big push last week with the help of Richard and Holly to get it all finished. Had it all finished and working on Friday, and I've got all the footage to edit it up. And I thought, it's okay, it's working. I'm going to put it in the cave on Saturday for people to enjoy. Having soak tested it for the duration of Friday, people can enjoy it. And then on Monday, I'll get my footage of all the gameplay and I'll finish up the video. How's
that going? It's going exactly to plan, and you're about to go and get the footage now.
It lasted an hour on Saturday. I wasn't in on Saturday. I had a message from Dan. He said, the Arcadia has switched off and it won't switch back on. Great. So I haven't been back in yet to figure out if it's just a fuse, if the power supply is popped, or if it's something a whole lot worse. So quite how this video is going to end, I don't know.
I think if it's not switching on, that's better than it's switching on and not working. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's better than just the monitor coming on and the system not coming on or something like that.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed it's just something simple, but we'll find out. But yeah, it just goes to show that when I make these trash to treasures, I really am flying by the seat of my pants. These are not planned, filmed, slickly edited months in advance. What happens, happens. So we'll see how this video ends up. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
I do like the mystery about it. I do like not knowing what's going to happen with it. But also I like that you've got the support of Dan, Holly, Richard, where the chances are, no matter what it is, you'll get through it. Eventually,
yes. Yeah, with all that help. So fingers crossed we'll get that working, yeah. What have you been doing, Dave, this week?
I've been shopping. This is This is the Orpheus 2.
It's a long board, isn't it?
It's massive. It has an intelligent MPU MIDI port for an NT32. It has a Sound Blaster Pro on it. It has a real OPL3, and it also has a plug-and-play Gravis ultrasound on it as well.
Is that the little darker board that's plugged into the top?
No, the darker board at the top there is an X2 SE.
Oh, that's your MIDI
is
instrument.
A wavetable board that is fully licensed by Roland. So it does sound like an SC55. What I'm missing is a memory for it. I'm waiting for a bit of memory coming from Germany, which will go on this and make it complete and allow me to use this, which is almost every sound card you could hope for. It's absolutely amazing. But it's not all. I've been spending more money.
Just on that sound card, for those who can't see it, it's a very long, lovely red PCB, but it's just normal ISA. That's not a full-length ISA slot, 16-bit slot, is it? It's an 8-bit ISA card. Or is it 16?
16.
It's using the lot.
Yeah, it's a 16-bit ISA card. Yep. It's amazing. But I've also been buying. Do you remember Clue Books, Neil?
I remember Clue Books. Do you remember, Dave? Do you remember Clue Books?
Yeah. Remember White Dog? No. What I like doing with Clue Books is uniting them with the boxes on my shelf. And in fact, I should also say about Clue Books, there's more to Clue Books than you might imagine. They had a real challenge to make the Clue Books interesting. So sometimes you would get extra stories in them, extra things like, in this one for Hill's Father, there's a story about, there's 3 about character playthroughs in it. But what I like to do, and I haven't done it, I've been saving it to do it on camera, is to take the Clue Book and unite it with its box, as it should be, all happy in there. All these SSI ones, the Clue Books fit in there as if they should have been there the whole time. What a happy thing to do.
I'm going to do exactly the same, because at our recent talk about Firebird software was a chap called Pete from Microprose, and he had in his attic a whole stack of brand new, from back in the day, USS Enterprise patches, little patch that you would put on your cap or your whatever you would do with it, your uniform. And this came with the first 1,000 copies of Star Trek The Rebel Universe, published by Firebird. So I went and bought it. Here you go, Star Trek The Rebel Universe for the Atari ST, because that's what it came out on. And here you go. I'm going to put the patch in the box, reunited.
Where it belongs.
Where it belongs. Look at that. Beautiful.
I don't know why that gives me so much enjoyment, but it does, doesn't it?
Now we can go on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I can I can feel a bit more secure knowing it's in there. Just one other thing to mention, my own bit of cave housekeeping. Gift vouchers are now available for the Retro Collective. So if you can't think of a Christmas present that you'd like to ask for, they are digitally sent out to you. So ask your loved ones for a gift voucher to come and visit the Retro Collective, and it will drop almost immediately, because I have to do that manually. I have to create the gift voucher and send it out to you in your email, and that's your Christmas sorted.
Can they be used in your shop as well?
Not those ones. We will do some shop ones next year, because that's a slightly different system. You've got the back end for the museum, you've got Shopify for the shop. But rmcretro.store, you can buy a gift voucher to visit the museum.
Do you like driving fast, Neil? Do you like driving fast? I do.
Yeah, in the right conditions, Dave.
Only when it's a huge, big, open, straight bit of road. I don't think I'm like Chris, who I assume drives like a lunatic all the time.
All the time.
Do you get that impression? I get that impression about him.
Goes sideways around every corner. And while we're on the topic of cars, Dave, I know you're a Jag driver. What do you make of the Jaguar rebrand?
I like the new car they've got out. There's a new concept car, and I think that looks great, although I don't think it would go over a speed bump. As for the rebrand, I like my Growler. I don't want my Growler taken away.
Yeah.
So there's the Growler, which is the Jaguar's face on the front of the car, and the Leaper, which is the Leaping Jaguar, and they've kind of sidelined those. And it's almost like vandalism, I think, because they're so iconic. I don't know if this was just I think it was an intentionally provocative marketing campaign to get people talking about it, and they're not really going to throw all their history in the bin. I think it was just a little bit of a cynical Nathan Barley style advertising thing. But I like the car. I hope they do go back to making saloons.
But yeah, I hope they don't just go to the generic font word Jaguar. You know, I like a car marquee. I like a prancing pony or a growling Jaguar or whatever it is. It feels like it's going a little bit generic, but yeah, I'm sure there is a master plan behind it all. Anyway, back to the story.
I think it's probably better to do your racing on a computer where it's safe. And I've been doing just that for what seems like a year, maybe not as long. I've been watching the progress of Jonathan Thomas as he's made his new game, which he's only just recently given a name to, Faster. And I'll come back to the actual game in a minute, but I want to talk about the Atari STE first. I mean, I always want to talk about the STE, but I think there's a good reason to talk about the STE here. And I think our audience maybe won't know everything about it. So I think people know that in 1984, things did a bit of a switcheroo with Atari and Commodore, with Jack Tramiel moving from Commodore to Atari, but also with Atari-backed project, the Amiga, being essentially bought by Commodore from under the nose of Atari, and that's a very simplified version of it. Please don't complain in comments. But what it meant is the ST was made in a hurry with two goals in mind: to be a monochrome monster and beat the Apple Mac for price, but also to exceed the Apple Mac's performance. And of course it did. It was faster, bigger resolution, more memory, all those things. But it also wanted to be a color computer as well. And it did manage that. And it was fantastic for the price.
The first 1 meg micro for under $1,000.
That's right. And even before that, just the 520 itself was incredible value for the time. Huge amount of power for what you paid. However, not everything that was intended to go in it made the cut. So it didn't come with a blitter. So a blitter is a way of moving memory around without going through the CPU. It helps with scrolling and sprites and all sorts of stuff. And I hope nobody challenges that, because I don't really know much about programming. And also, it didn't come with the intended sound chip called Amy. It still came out. It's still fantastic what it did, but it didn't manage everything that it was supposed to. Still an incredibly versatile machine. And I think that's more than what some people like to call it.
A MIDI typewriter.
Boo. I don't think you can change history. I don't think you can go back and add Amy and the Blitter to the original ST and still pretend that was possible. Time and money stopped that happening. But Atari did eventually fix those, sadly a bit too late. The Atari STE in 1989 added a few features. It added SIM slots for memory, it added a Blitter, it enhanced the graphics, and added PCM and DMA sound, Genlock, a few other things that were added as well. But as for games, it just simply wasn't well supported. I know Amiga owners like to lament how badly AGA games were treated. Often you just got a few extra colour gradients, and mostly that was it. And the STE got even less. That platformer Zool that I didn't get on with, Chaos Engine, which I do get on with, and a few others got a bit of enhancement on STE.
It's interesting, isn't it, how the Amiga with AGA, the ST with the added Blitter, any platforms like that, everybody just catered to the standard and said, okay, we're going to ignore that. We're going to try and cater to the biggest market. But when you start thinking about the PC, it's not like everyone said, yeah, we're only going to cater to the PC speaker. You know, they adopted things like the Sound Blaster much more willingly. They adopted, VGA much more willingly, Super VGA. I don't know why that is. Is there something different about PC ownership? Was it just expected that PC ownership was iterative and evolving, whereas when you were buying into an ST or an Amiga, you were saying, okay, I'm buying into a fixed platform for the next 4 years.
Even games like Wing Commander and Ultima 6, for example, couldn't handle it when the CPU got faster, so they weren't that forward-looking, but they still had CGA or EGA, they still had AdLib or Sound Blaster or MT32, yeah. So I don't, was it just the size of the market? I don't know.
Certainly very appealing, I'm sure, to developers to say, okay, this is the standard. You know, just like a console game programmer, this is the standard that we're building to. It must have been a nightmare for those PC games. But anyway, that's a complete different tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Point is, the STE never really got pushed to its limits at all. That's changed. Faster released yesterday. It was supposed to release today, but I don't know why it released a day early. That doesn't matter, because if you're hearing this, you can now play Faster on your Atari STE, or of course an emulator, or you missed it. It's an Outrun style racing game, and unlike the 16-bit versions of Outrun, which were turn-based, this one is real-time. So it moves in real time, and it runs a smooth 50 frames per second, which for a 16-bit game is massive. It's also got great big sprites, lots of them. There's no slowdown that I could see, and that's because it's been made to use the Blitter. You wouldn't get this game made back in the day for the STE, because they would have to write a new engine for the ST, and they wouldn't spend the money on that. It's a race against the clock, but it's got a really good chip tune as well as engine noises, and it plays really well. My tip is to slow down for corners, and I struggle with slowing down for corners. I want to go faster. I did ask Jonathan about it, and this is what he told me. He said, I think the main thing I'd like to get across about Faster is that it's an attempt to get the feeling of an arcade game on the humble STE with the high frame rate, frantic music, and digital sound effects. Basically, the message is that racing games on the STE don't need to be slow and sluggish. It's a very capable piece of hardware if you put in the effort. And that's true. I really hope this is the start of some new games coming from the ST, because there's not a lot of homebrew happening. The Amiga started to get quite a lot recently. I think the Amiga has gotten more and more recently, and the 8-bits still get the most. But I presume that's because it's less of a massive project to take on. I mean, I know Hoffman, making Secanoid, for example, put hundreds of hours into it, and I assume that the Twitch chat supporting him helped keep his motivation up. What did you think of Faster, Neil?
So I've been following and sharing this project for ages now, because Jonathan's been very good at keeping us up to date on social media with what's going on. And it is really satisfying to see him bring it to a conclusion and not just leave this as a tech demo and say, see, it was possible, on to the next thing. He's completely fulfilled this project. So that's great. First thing to consider is the technical achievement. It does wallop along at 50 frames per second with big, colourful sprites. I love the choice of the Wet Le Mans style racing game. These sprites haven't been lifted from another game, have they? This is all original artwork?
I think it's all original, yeah.
Yeah.
They may look quite similar too, but I mean, that's what happens if you make it based on a car, yeah.
Yeah. So it looks great. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks smoother than any other sprite scaling racing game from back in the day on the Atari ST that I've seen. Perhaps even on the Amiga, for that matter. See you in the comments. Because
better than the Amiga, you think?
Well,
better than Lotus 2? Better than Lotus 2. Say it.
Go on YouTube and have a look at this and have a look at Lotus 2, for example, and you might come to the conclusion that it looks not necessarily better, but smoother, buttery smooth.
Coward.
If you look at, let's look at what we got. If you look at Lotus 2 on the ST, so we're comparing apples to apples, it's certainly smoother than that. Although I might argue that there's a little bit more scenery detail on Lotus 2, so it is moving a little bit more around. Lotus 1 was just half a screen, wasn't it? It wasn't until Lotus 2 that we got full screen, and this game is full screen all the way. Look at something like Crazy Cars on the Atari ST for a like-for-like comparison as well. Very clunky, very different style.
It's not just the frame rate either, is it? It's the sense of speed.
The number of cars that you're racing up against, the sense of speed, the music, the digitized speech that's coming through, because of course it can do that because it's not relying on the AY chip. It's got the... Well, hang on, has it still got AY in an STE?
Yes.
So they never did improve the sound on it.
So it's got AY and it's also got PCM sound.
Yeah,
so you can have both. And this does. That's the sound effects in this are through PCM. So it's proper sound effects, but it also has a really good chip tune as well.
Yeah, so it looks really great. I always like, when I look at projects like this, to consider projects that use stock old hardware. So we're not talking about modern accelerators or anything like this. I like to think about how the impact it might have had if it had been released back in the day. So the STE came out in 1989. Feasibly, this could have been a 1989 game. The main competition in the UK, at least, for the ST was, and in the same price bracket, was the Amiga 500, which was only just gaining traction in 89 over here, really. We certainly hadn't got into the very best games that the platform had to offer. So I like to think of this game maybe running in a Dixon's in 1989 next to an Amiga 500 and the reaction that it might have got from shoppers. Shadow of the Beast appeared in 89, which was kind of that rolling technical demo that we would have seen on the Amiga in shops. Saying that, I don't remember seeing it in a lot of shops. It was maybe more independent shops where I saw Shadow of the Beast on loop, not necessarily in Dixon's. But this would have been, I think, the STE's equivalent. You could have had this on loop, and I think Faster on the STE in 89 would have shifted some units, and I think that's the highest praise I can give it, because that means I haven't played it, but from the look of it and from following its progress, that means it's a killer app, a killer game, doesn't it, for the platform? And of course, it's about more than just the hardware and the game. This no doubt contains decades of programming experience, lessons learned, secrets unlocked in the SDE, how it works to achieve this result. Otherwise, we may have seen something similar to this back in the day, right? There's a lot more to it than just, I made a game for a 1989 piece of hardware. There's all the accumulated knowledge that goes with that between then and now.
The only thing we might have seen back in the day would be if Atari said, get the wallet out and pay developers to have some really killer titles for the launch of the Atari STE, which we've mentioned lots of times about lots of different hardware manufacturers. They mostly got it wrong. Commodore were terrible for it. Atari didn't do it very well, especially with the Jaguar. They just didn't get the development machines and help the developers get games to sell the system out for its launch. And when you look at the successful launches from Sony and Microsoft and all the rest of it, they did, and that's why they succeeded.
Do you think they could have like killed Amiga 500 sales if you had your Atari ST, which was what, $299 by this point?
Yeah. And
what if they brought out sort of a cartridge type thing that just slots on the side and it said, okay, here's a blitter, here's a faster processor, it's £100, so it's the price of the Amiga 500. Yeah. And then that would have sort of dragged the standard up. Yeah. Not saying it would have been a success, but it could have been an option that could have made the ST fly.
The only way to succeed is to do what Amstrad did in 1984 and say, we need to buy in the software because no one's going to do it by themselves. If the Amstrad launched the CPC range without getting the software there, it would have flopped completely. And Atari and Commodore just didn't do that. So anyway.
The ST needed its Bridget.
Yes. It needed its Roland in the Caves.
Attack. It's Roland in the Caves, yeah.
Harrier Attack. There we go. Galactic Plague, which is better than you say it is.
It's awful.
It's a good little wave-based shooter. I like the mechanic in Galactic Plague where all you need to do is make it through. Make it through a wave, and if you make it through a wave, you get your lives back.
It's awful.
So thanks to Fiskit for linking this earlier in the week, and thanks to Salem OK for linking it when it launched. The game was launched at Silly Venture Demo Party, where, of course, it did win first prize for ST Game. It is available now free on itch.io. Jonathan has also made other games for the ST, a very accurate arcade port of Pole Position, which uses reverse engineering to get it right, and an STE remake of Lotus, which is reverse engineered to match the Amiga version mostly. So get racing. We're sponsored by Pixel Addict magazine. And this month's issue, number 25, is Fantasy World Dizzy on the cover. They talk about Bubble Bobble. There's a Sony PlayStation MIPS assembly programming tutorial. I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, 35 years of Dizzy. That's flown by. I remember the excitement of having my own copy of Dizzy, having played it at a friend's house.
I think I got it on I don't know if I got it on a cover tape, and it made me go out and buy the game. But I love my favourite one's the first Dizzy. The first Dizzy with the room names where your imagination filled in the gaps. Yeah. As they got more kind of cartoony with the yoke folk and so on, not quite so on board with that, although it's still good fun. There's an interviewer with, I don't know if you heard of this guy, Mark Fixie's Stuff.
I've never heard of him, no.
No.
Sounds awful.
I don't think it's a very trustworthy name. Thank you for sponsoring us, Pixel Addict. Where can people go to buy Pixel Addict?
pixel.addict.media. And there's also a special edition Atari Addict that has come out, and that's £10 for that special edition magazine. So put that in your stocking this Christmas. On this day, this very day, Dave, that we're recording this, a brand new Indiana Jones game is being released. The first from the franchise in over 10 years. And I can see the listing on Steam right now for £59.99.
Oof.
There's no Grail Diary. There's no red cellophane glasses for anti-piracy included. I'm afraid it's purely digital. Also available on the Xbox Series X or S and the PlayStation 5 in early Q1 or Q2 2025. Now, if I can bring myself to spend £60 on it, I will tell you my thoughts in a future episode, but I might just wait for the price to drop if I'm honest. And that's the problem with being a retro gamer, isn't it? Because £60 can get you a lot of physical boxed game for your shelf, can't it? What I did enjoy, though, was a link shared by Dr. Local called The History of Indiana Jones Games, and the link to that video and everything else we discuss will be in the show notes, so do go and check them out. This is a video on the IGN gaming channel, which teaches us about Indiana Jones games dating back to the first one, which was in 1982, Dave.
1982?
Yeah, called Raiders of the Lost Ark on the Atari 2600.
That makes sense, yeah.
An interestingly complex game by 2600 standards in that it used both joysticks, the second stick used for your inventory. And according to the Guinness Book of Records, it was the first ever game with a movie license tie-in.
Don't believe them.
It can always be slightly off with Guinness and video games, can't it? I've seen some Guinness records which are not quite accurate. But if anyone can think of a earlier example, the 1982 Raiders of the Lost Ark had E.T. the same year, but later, that was in December. The video does go into a couple of other later examples, but have a think. Can anyone think of an earlier game?
I don't believe them. I don't know what it is, but I just don't believe it took to 1982 to have a tie-in.
We then see Indiana Jones in the Lost Kingdom on the C64. This was released in 1984. It's an original game or an original indie story. So if you thought Fate of Atlantis was the first new game story, then you'd be wrong. It was this one. In it, it looks like Indy spends a lot of time waving a stick at birds and turning them into butterflies. It's a bit of an odd game. perhaps it could be incorporated into the new game as a kind of fever dream. I've certainly not played this one. Have you, Dave? Played that
No,
one?
never even heard of it.
No. And then 1986 was the first indie game that I did actually play, and that's the Atari arcade game of Temple of Doom, which featured those cool minecart chase levels, and you had to free the captured children from cages. I thought this arcade had a real magic about it back in the day, and a really good atmosphere. It felt very film-like. It had crunchy digitized speech in it, and there were various home ports of this one too. I don't think I ever had it on my Amstrad, but whenever I certainly went to watch people play it whenever I saw it at the arcade. Played it if I had some money in my pocket, but I rarely did.
I had it on my Amstrad. It wasn't that great because I think it relied on the arcade hardware, and also the pokey sound chip made it much better. You wanted to hear Indy say things, and you wanted to hear Mola Ram and all the rest of it, and CPC couldn't do it.
And it was also quite a simple looping game of the free the children, the minecart, and then free the children, the minecart. It was quite loopy. So when I played it on the arcade, I didn't get that far into the game, and I just enjoyed it for what it was. And then later when I had it on emulation, I thought, oh, this is a bit repetitive, actually. It's not that deep a game. But it was the first that I played. Another that I'd not heard of was 1987's Indiana Jones in Revenge of the Ancients. It's another original indie storyline. It was published by Mindscape, and this one is a text adventure. Indiana Jones games do cover a lot of different genres of game types, don't they? Have you played that one, Dave?
Nope.
Okay.
Turn down to Chris here.
Okay, well, I can guarantee you've played the next one. 1989, the video explains, came the Lucasfilm era of indie games, which kick in with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh.
The action game.
Boo.
Not good at all, the action game. Honestly, I think they should have just reskinned Rick Dangerous for the action game and called it Indiana Jones. It would have worked a whole lot better. But that was all made up for with the point-and-click adventure game, a brilliant game, The Last Crusade, developed in-house, unlike the action game, in-house by Ron Gilbert of Monkey Island fame. And this is as good as any other LucasArts point-and-click game from the era. It's a fantastic game. And the last point-and-click game from Lucas that I played, I think, on the 16-bit platforms before moving to the PC. Regular listeners are probably aware of both the action and adventure Last Crusade games, but there was also a third, the video explains. The NES got another action game from Taito, and involves a lot of high kicking. It's a bit odd to watch this. It looks very Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah.
Do you ever get the feeling they made a game they wanted to make and then said, which license will they slap on top of this?
He's got a seriously long leg, and he kicks it like up higher than his head. It's very odd. The man's got a whip. Why is he doing this?
I've never seen Indiana Jones raise his foot above his waist.
No. If Patrick Swayze was Indiana Jones.
Get those special jeans that what's his name? Chuck Norris special jeans for high kicking.
Action jeans for high kicking, yes. Things got even better in 1992 with The Fate of Atlantis, another point-and-click adventure game.
Fantastic.
Which the video describes that as legendary, and it really was about it. It had everything from the Last Crusade adventure turned up to 256 colors, a wonderful original story, and then the slightly later release added voice acting on CD-ROM, which made it even more movie-like, just as we get into that era of interactive movies and FMV games. This was really a game that felt more like a movie than those that tried to force those linear movie sequences upon us. So I really, really enjoyed Fate of Atlantis. And there was also kind of a sense of ownership or secrecy as a video gamer, because movie audiences weren't getting to enjoy this story. This was unique to the game.
This is just for us.
Yeah. Atlantis also got an action game, which is just as forgettable as the earlier action games. It used an awkward isometric perspective and really isn't very well known at all compared to the Last Crusade action game. 1993, we then saw Young Indiana Jones and also The Instruments of Chaos, also based on the Young Indiana Jones series. Did you ever get into that series, TV series? No, I didn't.
I watched maybe one or two episodes. It just didn't grab me. Do you know, I might go, it's not impossible that I'll go and watch it now, because I've heard it's not bad.
Yeah.
Did you?
I think I dipped into it and thought, no, it's not for me. It doesn't feel right, you know. So these two games, one was for the NES, one was for the Mega Drive, which the video, despite being an American video, does acknowledge that the Genesis was called the Mega Drive. So well done. We enjoyed that. And they both look like very generic NES or Mega Drive games with a hat and a whip added. The Super Nintendo, on the other hand, then got a compilation of Indiana Jones' Greatest Adventures, covering all three released films in one game. I think they also did a Star Wars type game that covered all three films of the time. And this is probably the best action game so far from the franchise. I have played this one on emulation, and I enjoyed it, but admittedly, I didn't get very far in it. It's quite a tough game. 1996, or your favorite indie game, Dave, Windows Desktop Adventures.
It had nothing that mattered about Indiana Jones in it, other than the light. I mean, what was it? What was it about?
It was a puzzle game. It was dynamically generated puzzles. It sort of had a bit of a Chips Challenge feel about it. We also got the Star Wars desktop adventure Yoda Stories at the same time. And it's around about then, 96, that I start to get really frustrated with the series, because as a PC gamer, I've enjoyed the greatness of the two adventure games. I want to see more of that. I want more of the same. Desktop Adventures felt like a corporate desk toy, didn't it? It didn't speak to me at all. In 1999, The Infernal Machine came out, which saw the franchise try to catch up with Lara Croft, who had arrived in 96. And that's another reason I was getting frustrated in 96, because here's Lara Croft doing Indiana Jones in 3D with a 3D FX patch and looking amazing. What do we get for Indiana Jones Desktop Adventures in the same year, Dave?
Yeah, Lara Croft stole Indiana Jones' legacy. I think that's what Indiana Jones should have been, is Lara Croft, and something comes up and they say, well, if Indiana Jones won't do it, we will. So
3 years later, Indiana Jones does it with the Infernal Machine, and it's clunky. It feels like a Tomb Raider knockoff. I gave it a try. I gave up on it fairly quickly, because games, cutting edge games move forward quickly, and a 1996 style game in 99 just felt a bit dated, even with Indiana Jones in there to just spice it up. Infernal Machine also made it out on the Game Boy Color in 2D, of course. And then we go into the new millennium, where we have The Emperor's Tomb, which is another Tomb Raider style game. I haven't played that one myself. And then more competition arrived in the form of Uncharted, so another indie-inspired series that did indie better than the indie action games that we've seen so far. Bit of fun in 2008, we had Lego Indiana Jones, and a sequel to that in 2009, while we still waited for LucasArts' next serious indie game, which was being teased at this point on all major consoles. And the video explains how this new indie game, which looks quite action-based, quite open world, and uses some of the same animation systems that went on to be used in Grand Theft Auto. So they had quite big ambitions for this game, but it was eventually binned. In 2009 came the Staff of Kings, which came in the middle of that Wii era and was really full of waggling and motion controls. So you can imagine how that plays. The video shows a game where you're paddling a raft down the rapids with your motion controllers. Yeah, great. And then 2011, we got a Facebook game called Indiana Jones in Adventure World. Moving on. And that was it, 2011. 13 years later, we finally get this new game called Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's described as a first-person shooter or action shooter set between the first two movies, and it's made by Machine Games, who also made some of the Wolfenstein games. So I think we can guess how it's going to feel and play. Modern graphical advances, of course, make it look more movie-like than ever, but do we think it will capture the indie and the indie feel completely? Dave, have you learned anything from that history of indie games? What do you make of the new game? And is it just me, or have so many opportunities been missed along the way to make indie one of the truly great video game franchises?
Yes, I have learned something. You missed one really important game out, which
what did I miss? Well,
I'll come to in a minute.
Was it in the video, or did the video miss it as well? Because I'm kind of reviewing the video here that I watched.
I think the video missed it as well. The new game looks interesting. I wish it was more adventure focused. I want a story. I want a sense of wonder, a sense of exploration, a sense of being blown away with awe, because they can do that in games now. But it still looks okay. I have heard from a friend though who was rather disappointed. There's a cat in it, and you are not able to pet the cat. All games with a cat, you should be able to pet the cat. Lots of missed opportunities. I mean, they let two other franchises steal their stuff, and they haven't caught up. They've just been saying, well, we'll do a copy of the copy of us, and they haven't managed to do it right. And maybe this time it will be, though. It's getting good reviews, so maybe it's a good game. It did got me thinking, though, what is Indiana Jones? What do his movies represent, and what do the games manage to get right? So the biggest thing for me is the sense of wonder and exploration. He's traveling to historically significant places, and we get to see a real spectacle. You get to see these wonderful panoramas as he opens up into a cave with all this sparkling lights and so on. We get to see hidden secrets that have been hidden for centuries or even millennia. We get to see him interact with mythical items from history like the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant.
There's always a race against time to get there, isn't there? You've got to be the first to get there and get the thing.
So that's the kind of sense of wonder and exploration. We see him contend often with the Third Reich, but not always the Third Reich, but it's usually against a powerful bad guy in charge of a load of goons. We then see, so that's the conflict, we then see charismatic and colourful characters like Salah, played by John Rhys Davies, Cairo, City of the Living, and Short Round, played by Ke Huy Quan. You cheat, Dr. Jones. And Willie Scott, played by Kate Capshaw. I hate the water, I hate being wet, and I hate you, Indiana Jones. And the reason
that was
why
Sean Connery.
The reason why I'm always Sean Connery, I can't help that. Surely some mistake. The reason why I mentioned those is the game that's been missed out that's so important to me, Indiana Jones Pinball. Indiana Jones Pinball was absolutely magic. It had so many different modes in it that matched what you saw in the films, and it just bombarded you with all these memorable quotes from the movie. It is so good. I think lots of people think it's the best pinball ever made, and quite rightly so. It's absolutely fantastic, and any video game list of Indiana Jones should have mentioned it.
It's not a video game, though, is it? It's a pinball game. I think we can let him
There's
off.
a video game in it where you shoot people in the bar, and there's a minecart sequence. Those are video games.
Is it video, or is it LED Matrix game?
Is that not a video?
I guess if you have enough LEDs, it becomes a video.
Yes. And of course, Indy himself. So we've got the sidekicks there, but Indy himself is charming and always has something clever to say. And I think Tomb Raider and Uncharted try to take on some of that, but they don't manage all of it. And I think that means that Indy should have room to do it in gaming, especially as I don't think there's going to be another film. I don't think there'll be another Indiana Jones film. They'll maybe try and reboot it, and I hope they don't, but there's not going to be another Harrison Ford one. So we have the adventure, we have the conflicts, we have the sidekicks and the charm. And how well do the games capture it? Well, the point and clicks do it best. They get everything apart from the conflict in there. And they do try with the conflict, but they don't quite have it.
And they even get some action in there as well, you know.
Yeah, they do. I mean,
as best they can.
It's a bit clunky, but you still have the race against time and the feeling of conflict as much as they can. Games like Temple of Doom in the arcade manage the conflict and the charm. And the pinball manages the conflict, the sidekicks, and the charm, but not really the adventure. You don't really explore anything in the pinball.
No, difficult with a pinball.
I know. The new game, there are new modes to explore, and can you get the jackpot, the triple jackpot, and what happens next kind of thing. There is exploring the modes. But the new game has the potential to do all four of them. The voice sounds like Indy. They can do the adventure and the sense of wonder. They can do the conflict, and that leaves the sidekicks, and they can easily put them in as well. So it could do all four. I don't think as a kind of Wolfenstein type game it's going to do all four, but it could.
Yeah. I have hopped on Twitch this morning to see people playing it, and the immediate feeling that I got was I'm watching Wolfenstein. I need to watch it more to see if they do have a deeper element of puzzle solving and adventure, but it all feels very familiar, which is putting me off a little bit, if I'm honest. Yeah. Because I've played so many first-person shooter games. It needs to have something unique, something different. And also, I find it interesting going first-person with Indy because he's such an iconic character. Surely, you want to see him as much as possible on the screen. You want to feel like you're controlling Indy. I know you can get that across through voice acting, and games like RoboCop have done it recently, but I feel like they're missing a trick a little bit by not having Indy front and center all the time. Yeah. Tomb Raider is an interesting one, the way you say it stole its thunder. I mean, it makes me think, is Wing Commander to Star Wars what Tomb Raider is to Indy?
Well, what happened after Wing Commander? What did LucasArts give us after Wing Commander? They gave us Star Wars X-Wing and Star Wars TIE Fighter.
That's true.
And they are better. I'm going to say I think they're better games than Wing Commander. So they had their thunder stolen, and they said, no, we can do this better. And they did do it better. But LucasArts didn't do it with Indiana Jones after the Adventures, at least.
They didn't. Well, this new Indiana Jones game is available on Steam right now, or wherever you get your Xbox games from. Where do you get them from? Is it the Microsoft Store, the Xbox Store? God, it's been such a long time since I've had a up-to-date current Xbox. And your face says it all
Dixon's.
too,
you go to Dixon's and buy them off the shelf in a box.
And ask the shop assistant.
Yes.
I will be disappointed if one of the adventure games isn't hidden there somewhere as an Easter egg. I know they've done that in previous indie games. I'd like to see that. Let us know if you do play it. Let us know what you think over on our subreddit, reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro. And if you do get it, you'll be pleased to know today, the day that it's been released, just been out a few hours, the first patch is already available for download. Enjoy.
Day one patches. Welcome on two new patrons, Stefan and Andrew, and thank you, Richard, for editing yours. Your support helps us make this happen. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Where can people go if they'd like to become a twirler? Oh,
if you want to be a twirler, and as Ian taught us last week, it took him nearly 200 shows to learn. It's a This Week in Retro lure. That's what a twirler is. Head to patreon.com/This Week in Retro.
This episode, I think, might be the calm before the storm, because next episode is the last episode of the year. It's the Christmas episode, and it's episode 200. Yeah. So I don't know quite what's going to happen on it, but this is a very calm episode in comparison, I would imagine.
I heard you've booked Mr. Blobby.
Mr. Blobby.
No, of all your impressions, Dave, that is the worst I've ever heard from you.
Do a better one then.
Blobby, blobby, blobby.
That's better.
Thank you.
But he does this screaming thing as he runs at you.
Oh, he does. That's quite terrifying, yeah.
That's what I was trying there, but I didn't want to scream into the microphone. People listen to this and
maybe if Duncan transposes my impression over the top of your impression, we'll get the perfect
Blobby. Nigel French and
this
Justin
Brown. This is why
Brown.
you become patrons.
Nigel French and Justin Brown organised and ran a meet and have sent us some pictures and video links. And Nigel gave me some information on it. He says, Justin Brown and myself, Nigel French, recently ran the Retro Gaming Weekend at North Walsham in Norfolk. We held it at the Black Swan Pub and Theatre on the 30th of November and 1st of December, with Saturday evening featuring a DJ set by DJ Hoffman, as well as Ian, so that's Hoffman's real name. David Pleasance was there, selling his usual merch and signing stuff. Sonic, Mario, and Spider-Man were also there, so Fathers for Justice turned up. And and got invited to switch on the Christmas lights in town. The Black Swan is a community not-for-profit pub, and we raised £300 from the event over the 2 days. So this is a great thing. I mean, everybody had fun, presumably. The pictures look as if everybody had fun. Fantastic weekend, and it raised money, and it's not some horrible corporate cynical thing. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So we do want to do a bit to help you know about events like this worldwide. And I think Rob Smith mentioned something about trying to get retro.directory to accommodate more event type things in the new year. There is lots going on, but we're also constantly barraged by information. And I think it's difficult to get the right information to the right people, because if you just happen to see across it, you're not going to randomly see an event in your local area unless there's somehow some way of targeting it.
There's nothing more disappointing than seeing a fantastic retro event has happened the week before in your area. And you're like, how did I miss that? I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. I don't know how the right way to do it is, but hopefully Rob Smith can think of something.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting us know. And if you've got an event coming up like that, please let us know, and we will let people know in advance. Ollie's demo.
Yes, Banjo Guy Ollie.
Dual playfields.
Unprompted this was as well. I think
dual playfields, sprites, bit planes, parallax scrolling, greets, scrolling text, bouncing text, mirrors, effects. Of course, it has to be a demo, and our friend Banjo Guy Ollie's exploration of Amiga Assembler has seen him finish off the demo with us in it. It really is amazing. Duncan, I'm sure, is putting it up on screen, but you can download the ADF and run it on your own Amiga from disk, and there's even a little bit of trolling in the scroller, as there should be. It's a great bit of fun. Thank you, Ollie. I hope you enjoyed making it. We certainly enjoyed watching it.
Yes, thank you, Ollie. I won't spoil the content of it because it's a great little demo. But if you do want to use us to poke fun at, to help with your own projects in assembly, in music creation, or anything like that, do feel free. Just make sure you share it with us. We like to see this.
No need to be kind.
No.
On to briefs now. Sega has told Super Sega to shut down and destroy everything.
How can you destroy something that doesn't exist, Dave?
Well, I know. Super Sega are the people who told the world they were releasing an FPGA device that would do everything Sega, even stuff that hasn't been done in SPGA yet. They asked for a €3 payment to reserve a place, and I think lots of people said, well, it's €3. It probably won't happen, but €3 just to make sure I get the opportunity. And they then took full payment.
Which was €3.
Yes, hundreds. They're the guys that showed a non-viable board saying it was a real one when it simply couldn't be. I mean, really impossible for this board to be anything realistic. Debunked by our friend Electron Ash as well as others. Our advice a few episodes back was do not give them any money. And my view now is they'll hold up their hands and say, well, it's not our fault. Sega have shut us down. We can't help it. And anyone who's given them money will have to have a fight on their hands to get it back. If you're in the UK, consumer law will protect you. It's a hassle, though. It's a nuisance to have to go through that. And I'm sure these Super Sega people will try to cling on to as much of their ill-gotten gains as possible. I don't know if it's up to me to say that they're scammers, but if they were scammers, they would look exactly like they are doing now. Don't believe for a moment that anything was ever going to come on this. And I don't believe that the project has failed because of Sega. I believe the project has failed because they lack the competence to do it. And at the most generous way I can describe it is that they were fantasists who had a hope that they could do something that they can't do. But the very worst way to look at it is they're con artists.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're still around making a noise talking about it and haven't already disappeared by now, but obviously have their reasons. We'll see what happens.
So Pajaco links us to the Time Extension coverage. I think Time Extension has been the place to go for this. They're a great place to go for news.
OK Yam 894 tells us that HEBA, who are they, are launching a new Mr. Multi-System, the MMS2. Now, this is a very different story to the one that you've just shared because we know HEBA have previous of decades of FPGA experience, as well as the first Mr. Multi-System, which is in the hands of lots of happy customers. Before we get onto the MMS2, they have also done another batch of the first multi-system board, which will really satisfy anyone who's bought things like the new Mr. Pi from Tacky, because you can just bolt that onto the board and then you've got a consoleized, nice FPGA Mr. system. The MMS2, details are scarce. We can only share what's been shared by Richard so far on socials. And so far, we've learned that this is a single all-in-one board with the FPGA chip right there on the board. So you don't have to get a D10 or a D10 clone and bolt it onto this board. It's just a nice single system with the RAM and the FPGA chip on there. The last tweet I think I saw Richard was talking about designing the enclosure, and then he'll share that soon. So we'll see that it does come with a case, and it's all nicely all in one as a console. I always forget the name of the company. Analog. Think Analog, but Mister based. So this is really exciting news. That's a bit about all the information we've got so far, but I know a lot more news will be forthcoming as Richard and Heber release it. Excited, Dave?
Yeah. The weakest thing about Mister has been the reliance on the DE10 Nano board. Even with Takyudon's replacement for the DE10 Nano, the clone of it, even with that, it's still the weakest point because you get there's a bad DAC on there, there's problems with things and so on. It's not perfect. And having it all integrated in one board, especially if it's going to be the same quality as MMS1, will be absolutely fantastic. And I think Mister is the best thing to happen in retro gaming for a long time. And this will make it even easier. This will allow people, hopefully, to buy a single product, stick a memory card in it, and get going. And you couldn't do that. You've had to have kits, or if you get the Mister Stack thing, it's like a tentacled monster with stuff hanging out all the sides. The consoleized one is the best way. And hopefully, this means that people can buy a single thing, stick an SD card in it, and get going on a fantastic project. So we will have Richard on, I'm sure, in the new year to talk about it when he's got more that he can say.
Yeah, the only other thing that I've seen he's shared is that it's backwards compatible with existing multi-system cartridges. So there's a range of cartridges that you slot in that give you things like analog output, a MT32 Pi, things like that. If you've already bought into that ecosystem, you can just slot that into the new MMS2, and it's fully compatible with Mister. So any other snack adapters that you've bought for your stack or any other Mister system will be compatible with it. So really exciting news. And I can't wait to see what else comes out of this. Shop.heber.co.uk to find out more.
Computerist 1969 tells us about the Micro Mac, which is a Pico-based Mac emulator. So that's a Raspberry Pi Pico and a simple breakout board. The Raspberry Pi Pico is about £5, I think. So you can get yourself for not very much a nice little Mac emulator.
A new Amiga Star Wars game is coming. It's not officially licensed, of course. It looks simply stunning, absolute incredible use of the Amiga's graphics, but it does need an accelerated 1200 to run. A link to that is in the show notes.
The graphics on it are absolutely stunning. It's incredible. TAC R Redditing lets us know about a new Amiga preservation project coming from Amiga Love. It's already opened and it started with 200 disks imaged and over 300 megabytes of total content so far. The goal is to try and archive the wider Amiga community type stuff. So disk magazines, public domain stuff, user group disks, shareware.
Just going into public domain is a huge wealth of software that needs to be preserved there. So a massive amount of work ahead of them. Well done for taking it on.
Yeah, the main Amiga the main life of the Amiga, kind of from the late 80s into the early 90s, is great. But there were people who used the Amiga from 1985, and there were people who are still using it at the end of the 90s. And all that stuff is out there, and it really does belong. It does deserve to be collected and to be enjoyed by people. There's so much Amiga stuff out there. So congratulations to Amiga Love. I hope it is really successful. Link in the show notes if you want to participate in that. I know that there's lots of Amiga fans who listen to this, lots of people who have been involved in user groups and so on. Get your stuff on there, get it archived.
Holly, if you're listening, then please cover your ears because we don't have room for this. In Windsor in Berkshire, an auction is taking place for a replica model of Starbug, the famous green ship from Red Dwarf. All proceeds are going to cancer research, and the auction will transport it to anywhere in the UK, except for Stroud. They definitely will not bring it to Stroud, Holly.
It's okay, Neil. It's the AA will do it. The AA have kindly offered to do it.
Oh, have they?
Yeah. The good news is the auction is today, Neil, and Holly listens to it on a Sunday. So fantastic. Holly will listen to this tomorrow, a day late, Holly, although maybe she already knows about it.
Oh God, I don't want to go into the cave
sick on Saturday and say, I can't come in today. Someone's come up and she'll be at the auction. 42 Nobody 42 links us to an interview with the creator of the MSX, a computer that was missed, that we noticed was missed in last week's list, and it should not have been. There's a few comments supporting this, and I noticed Happy Coding pointing out that the MSX gets a bit of a bad reputation in the UK because of the awful, lazy Spectrum ports to it. It's very true. Imagine taking a Spectrum game, porting it to a much better machine, and at the same time making it worse. And there's loads more. There's just so much more in the subreddit this week. This week in particular, huge amount of stuff to read through. Go and browse it when you have a minute. Maybe while you're doing something. What, Neil? What would people be doing when they had a browse?
I'm not saying it, Dave. It's not going to become a catchphrase.
It's not. No. What are you not saying?
Well, they might be making their Christmas log for when the family come round.
Yeah. They could be crafting it.
They could be crafting a log.
Thank you. Corpse Y has submitted an article for GameSpot about the supposed rise in watching games being streamed. And here's the start of the article. Over the last decade, streamers have taken on greater prominence in the gaming landscape, and some have even attracted significant fan followings. Now, a new report suggests that players are spending more time watching gaming videos than they are actually playing the games themselves. I will note it says watching gaming videos, so I'm guessing this might be included in that. People talking about games, not just playing games, is included there. But even still, that's a lot of watching. Now, you might think fair enough, but I don't think it's a new thing. I think it's always been there and always will. And if we go back in time to what we used to have, but I think it's dying away a bit, is YouTube Let's Plays. And I love YouTube Let's Plays. It's a recording of someone playing a game, usually not particularly heavily edited. Sometimes they'll cut out a bit of the grinding or inventory management or whatever, but you still get Let's Play contents, but it seems the vast majority of it now is recording a stream and then uploading it as video.
It's like looking at screenshots on the back of a box back in the day. A YouTube Let's Play is just a really nice way to get a feel for a game. And done right, without talking over the top of them, and someone who knows how to play it through, it is a form of archiving, isn't it? Of preserving that game in a way for everyone to enjoy. I love it.
And they're getting quite sophisticated. Sometimes they'll stream it, and then the recording they make for YouTube, they'll remove the chat window so people don't feel as if they're missing out. And you could even, if you're streaming, you could even have a key to hold down when you're talking to streams, so it doesn't record what you said to stream, but it does record what you said about what you're doing. I find it a bit off-putting when I'm watching a video recording of a stream, because I feel as if I should be able to participate in the chat. But that's not the point I was getting at. I've had a look back, and I can easily find Let's Play videos from 2007 on YouTube. And despite not feeling like it, that is 17 years ago. So Let's Play videos have been around for a long time. So we're, even without streaming, we've got 2007 to go back to. But YouTube Let's Plays are not the only way it was done. I remember you could use MAME to record play. So you could then, with a very small file, pass on your gameplay to someone else, and they could watch how you broke Pac-Man, for example, or watch your high score in Solomon's Key, just through this little recording. I think Doom could do it. I'm nearly certain Doom could do the same. And I'm sure lots of other things could. And in fact, I know that one of my favourite games, Dungeon Master, got a Windows port, and you could replay someone else's playthrough of the game on that CSB Win. So that was things like speedruns, or someone showing you how good they are at a game. You could record that and someone else could play it. So certainly from even the early days of the mass market internet, when everyone was suddenly online, just before the millennium, there were plenty of ways to watch someone else play. But do you know where I'm going with this, Neil? You must know where I'm going with this, Neil.
You're going to tell us about your hobby of peering through people's windows, Dave.
Not really, no. I'm going to go back to visiting a friend's house and watching them playing Elite or Dungeon Master, or taking turns playing Chucky Egg, trying to solve a text adventure together. And I'm going back to when I used to go to the arcade with maybe enough money for 20 minutes of gameplay, but stayed for an hour and a half peering over someone's shoulder. 'em. 'Shoulder, 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 'em. ' I've always watched people play games. I've always done it. I've always loved it. And I do it just as much as ever now, but for maybe different reasons. Neil, do you like to watch?
I have a little watch sometimes. It's usually for one of two reasons. I want to see what a new game is like, just as someone is working it out, for example. The new indie game, exactly what I did this morning. I wanted to see it before there were any slick reviews. I just wanted to see the reality of somebody playing the game early on, getting to grips with it and what it felt like. If I want to see a playthrough of an old game, I'll go to YouTube and watch a Let's Play like you described. I love that. But for new games, I like to hop on Twitch. The other is community. I like to recreate that feeling that you described of hanging out with friends. There are cave folk like Mean Machine Dean. Well, twirler folk as well, like Mean Machine Dean, who stream regularly. And I know if I go and watch Dean, for example, stream, there will be people from our Discord who will be there chatting too, and will be laughing along with Dean, or trying to distract him with fart noises because he's
that's more
rather
fun.
sillily allows us to make those noises on his stream. Or I'll watch Hoffman when he does his DJ sets or his coding streams. So I do that maybe once a week or so, not a huge amount. Just seems to be one or two people I like to watch streaming. Streaming certainly has its place in my choice of modern entertainment: gaming, movies, TV, music, Twitch. That just feels pretty normal. It's just another outlet for me to enjoy things and be entertained in the rare moments that I have downtime to do so, which it really is quite rare. And the nice thing about streaming like Twitch is I can just put it on a second monitor while I'm doing some work that doesn't require too much concentration. So it's quite easy to consume in that way.
I mean, I can watch games being played easier than I can find the time to play the game myself these days, especially when, if I think I'm going to sit down and play a game, I get that horrible sense of guilt. You should do this first. I do enjoy videos as well from things like XPete, Rose Tinted Spectrum, Gears of Games, What Ho Snorkers, where they'll play a game that I may never get around to and distill that into a 20-minute video where they tell me about the game, they've played it extensively, I learn lots about it, and I get maybe, 60% of what I would get from the game, except it doesn't take me 20 hours to do that. One thing I have done, one thing I said I would do that I failed to do, and I promised I would, and I've let down Chris, is play more in 24 challenge. I said I would play more in 24. I don't really think I have, but I am going to play more in 25. I promise I am. And I was recording a little mini review for someone of a game, Lords of Chaos, and it got me really keen to play it again. So this is the manual. This is the original manual that came with the game. I can't read that. It's tiny. So I even went as far as to print off the manual in A4 so that I could read the manual. And I'm halfway through the manual and I've still not got to playing the game. I've got a load of chores to do today after we finish recording. Once I do those, hopefully I'll sit down to do it. But my appetite to play games is bigger than my stomach. My eyes are bigger than my plate, kind of thing. So I will do it in 24. How is your play more in 24 going, Neil?
There's still 2 weeks left, Dave.
There's still 2 weeks left.
Yes.
Are we going to cram a year's gaming into that?
Yep.
I want to ask Chris how he's done with it. I don't know when he's on next. Wink to camera. I don't know when that might be. Wink to camera. It's episode 200 next week, and I wonder when a good time for him to come back on might be. Wink to camera.
Time now for our community question of the week, which you can find pinned on our subreddit. And last week's question was all about that list. And we asked the question, what are your top 5 computers, not consoles, for retro gaming? So that we can make our own list. So let's bring up the answers to the question of the week. A familiar name at the top. It's our good friend Richard Shears. He says, there is only one answer for me. The PC with a Pentium 233 MMX. Remember, there was no IBM PC compatible representation in that original list. So Richard's gone specifically for a P233 MMX. Got to have the MMX extensions. Mm-hmm. The perfect machine to cover so many wonderful years of gaming. Don't get me wrong. I want to say Speccy, Amiga, CPC, or even the Mega Drive as personal choices. Also known as the Genesis, you know. But when I look back at what I use, what I use most is my Pentium-based machine with a Voodoo 3, Sound Blaster, or 64. Screamer, Doom, Rise of the Triad, Half-Life, NASCAR. The list is longer than any other, and I think it's a fair answer regardless of geography. And now that I've bored you with the obvious, I'll shut up.
The Pentium 233 MMX is a really special machine because you can endorse without doing anything. You can slow it right down to a fast 386. So that means it can cover a huge amount of gaming, even games like Ultima 7, Ultima 6, which struggle on faster machines. On a 233 MMX, you've got lots of ways to slow it down. Ultima.
Carry on.
Silicon Underground says, number 1, the Amiga 500. When games that took advantage of 1 mega RAM released, we'd never seen anything like it. Number 2, the Commodore 64. It had more titles available for it in the mid-1980s than you could play in a lifetime. That's true. Number 3, the Atari 800 XL-XE. Most underrated machine of the 1980s. Mule alone makes this machine worthy of any top 5 list. Number 4, the Atari STE for 2 years, 1985 and 86. Don't you start booing. It had the attention from developers the Amiga only got later. In 1986, this was arguably the best gaming machine you could buy. Of course it was. And number 5, a 32-bit PC with VGA or better and some kind of OPL sound. Pick your era, 386, 486 or Pentium. Eventually, PC gaming took over at the expense of everything else. That's a reasonable list.
Yeah.
How can you do anything justice with 5, though?
Protec438 has the third most popular answer with, at the top, a 386DX33 PC with a VGA graphics card and Sound Blaster for playing all of those LucasArts and Sierra point-and-click adventure games, Wing Commander 1 and 2, F-15 Strike Eagle 2, LHX Attack Chopper. This is a man who speaks to me. I love this. Number 2, Commodore 64. Nothing plays Spy Hunter and Hunchback like a C64, except maybe the arcades. Number 3, Atari 520 STE, in brackets, for Test Drive and Arkanoid 2. And I guess just the kudos of saying you have the E. But now you can play faster. Number 4, Amiga for F-18 Interceptor and Pinball. Hang on a minute. Atari ST at 3, Amiga at 4.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Number 5, Atari 8-bit for playing Moon Patrol. It's a solid list, Protec. Started strongly.
Shall we make people happy? There's the bottom entry, the least upvoted one is from Mega STE. And in number 1, he's got the Atari 520 STFM. In number 2, he has the Atari 1040 STFM. In number 3, it's the Atari 1040 STE. Number 5, it's the Atari 4160 STE. And in 5th position, the Atari Mega STE. I think that must be reverse order. Just a bit of fun there, I'm sure. We actually had a couple of comments on the YouTube video saying Amiga, 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 and someone else saying Amiga, Commodore 64, and then nothing else matters.
Chris has commented 005 Agema. Of course, he's got Amigas in there, but also an Electron, a Spectrum, and we know he loves it, the Philips Video Pack G7000 he's got in there.
I think if we're going to draw a line under all of this and the wonderful comments we've had and so on, the best one is the one you had.
Which one was that?
The one you had. For me, it's the
Protec.
CPC and the ST.
Protec.
For you, it's the CPC and then the Amiga. Or maybe differently, it's the one you've got right now. Whatever you've got to play on right now.
I'm with you. I thought you meant the comment I read out for the
No. I mean
the system that you had, that you have.
Yeah,
the
the system you had as a
nostalgia
kid is the
for,
best one.
the memories for. There's no wrong answer. Got it. I'm with you. I'm on the same page. Give me coffee.
I would like anyone who has ideas about what Jonathan might do with Faster to add some comments, maybe some suggestions for him on what kind of gameplay could enhance this to make this game bigger and more involved, like, I don't know, like Overlander or even like Supercars. That'd be interesting.
Road
Please do. Overlander?
Road Blasters.
Road Blasters?
There is a sound effect on Faster that sounds exactly like the tyre screeching from Supercars, which may also have been used in Lotus, because that was another Magnetic Fields game. I wonder if you might have cheekily used the same tyre screech sound.
Or maybe that a tyre screeching sounds like a tyre screeching.
Maybe. Maybe. Time now for our new question of the week. And yes, please do leave a comment about Faster, because it sounds like Jonathan is looking to actually further develop the game and add more features. New question of the week. What's the greatest or worst movie tie-in game that you've played, and why? So I didn't want to just do the worst. I want some good examples as well. Let us know. TIE Fighter. And on that subject, Dave, you also did a bit of research while I was talking earlier, and you discovered that Superman is a video game programmed by John Dunn for the Atari VCS or 2600, released in 1979, also marketed as Superman the Movie, which is a 1978 film based on DC Comics. So there was an earlier game, Guinness Records.
Yeah. The game was tied into the release of the movie. Guinness, rubbish. Stick to drinks.
Head to reddit.com/r/this week in retro to participate in the question of the week, to submit news stories that you think we might be interested in and the rest of the audience might be interested in. Dave, we failed to mention something quite significant. We did it. We got our wish, 10,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for everyone subscribed. We love our audience. We love your nice comments. We love this being a success. We hope to reach more people, and 10,000 is a huge achievement for us. Thank you very much. And that's on YouTube. So it's a huge achievement for a podcast to get that many subscribers with long format videos on YouTube. So thank you so much. Quite how many subscribers we have on the podcast platforms, it's a bit of a mystery because it's very hard to get that kind of information.
Yeah, nobody knows if you've subscribed. Your podcatcher knows, but it doesn't tell anyone. So there's no real numbers for it. But what you can do is tell your friends, get everyone listening,
spread the word.
Leave a review
on your podcast.
We haven't had reviews for a while.
Yeah.
Leave a review of the podcast somewhere to tell people that it's okay to listen to.
That could be our Christmas present. If you want to give us a Christmas present, leave a review on your podcast app. That would be lovely. Thank you. It doesn't, hopefully positive, but just be honest. If you've got this far in the show and you hate us, then well done to you. Well done.
What are you doing?
What are you doing with your life? Why are you still here? For everyone else, thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next week for show number 200 with our special Wink guest. Guess who it is.
There's 2 guests next week. 2 guests.
Wow, double wink. Blink.
Don't blink. We'll see you next week for the last show of the year. Thank you for joining us. He's waving. I'm waving.
Bye.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RNC The Cave and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Stiles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.